This is my great-grandmother, Alice Marie Wilson. She is the mother of Maud Wilson, who married my great-grandpa Matthew from the previous video. For roughly 2 years, I've done my best to try to find the parents of Alice Marie Wilson so I can find out where the family comes from on this side. Unfortunately, I've had no luck over the last 2 years. I've tried to find the parents' names that were listed in Alice's obituary in 1966. They were listed as George Wilson and Charlotte Hamilton. Again, there was no luck. I've even tried to find Alice through her sisters, Harriet Wilson and Maud Wilson, who married a man named Fleming, with no luck. I decided that if my mom and I were going to actually make some progress while I was still in town, we needed a different plan. We needed to create a list of all of the sisters, Alice, Harriet, and Maud, and all of the information and where it came from. Then we needed to make a list of what we needed still and where we could find it. If I couldn't find Alice through her parents when she was young, maybe I could find Alice's parents through her sisters, Harriet and Maud. My mom shared with me that she found an article several years ago in the paper about Harriet that she had been poisoned in Pekin, Illinois, back in 1908. We also used the obituary of Frank Hart, Harriet's husband, for further information. I was bound and determined to find Alice Wilson, whether it was through her or her sisters. We made sure our maps were ready to go, and the next morning we loaded up all of our records and we took off. With our list of directions and places we needed to visit, I knew our first stop was going to be a somber one. Our first stop was the Bartonville Asylum. This was where Alice passed away.
Wow. So they really did get rid of the whole thing.
Since my move to Arizona, it definitely appeared that the building had been ripped down, but the skeleton of the floor plan still remained. It was unnerving to think that my great-grandma Alice had spent her last 2 years of life in this asylum.
Yeah, I would not have known. Oh,
Yeah, and there's some more wall.
God. Oh my goodness.
Though my mom visited Alice here before, the building is now nothing more than rubble. A shadow of its former glory, the building sat in rubble, a play place for teens that came to spray paint the walls. It sat for decades, completely abandoned after being shut down in the year 1972.
One of the times we came to visit Grandma, we went in to this long room with beds on either side and a aisle down the middle. It was the ladies' ward, and most of the people were in their beds, and some were restrained, and they were most were, hey, hey, and just really horrible. And I believe, if I can remember correctly, I think maybe Grandma was up and in a wheelchair. Maybe because my grandma, said, we're coming out, can you have her in a wheelchair? And that's probably the day we had that picture of her taken. But it was scary that going in there, and there had to have been at least 10 beds on each side.
Yeah.
It was a very long ward, and I remember as a child thinking how sad it was.
Mom's story shook me up, but I was re-energized when I remembered that we still had some documents that could help us a little bit more. Earlier in the week, we had traveled to the Peoria Public Library to find some more information on Harriet Wilson. After reviewing several reels of microfilm, we were able to find an article on Hattie and gave us the direct date that she died. The tragic article explained that Hattie had died an agonizing death, being poisoned by arsenic, which she bought from a woman coming through the town of Pekin, Illinois, and said it was a beauty supply regimen. With this information in hand, we went to the Pekin Public Library to see if we could find more information on Hattie's death. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything but construction, as well as the slowest computer dial-up system I've ever used. The only helpful thing we did find was this information on the Historical Society. Leaving the library empty-handed, we decided to head to the Pekin County Courthouse. to go up to the Vital Records department. We were hoping to find the parents' names of Hattie Wilson on a death certificate if we could find one. Standing in the beautiful courthouse, my mom nor I were ready for what we were about to see.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is just...
More gut-wrenching. More gut-wrenching.
Cause of death, abortion. My heart sank. Now I knew why she drank the elixir. The woman that sold it to her, Rosa Etzler, wasn't selling something for beauty. She was a doctor, trying to help someone that couldn't afford another child. An article said the family lived in destitution. This was Hattie's escape. And it ended her life. So this is Hattie's last residence. Let's drive a little bit. I want to see if there is a big tree in their front yard. As we drove past the newly renovated home, I imagined my great-aunt living there, wondering what it was like for her to live with 4 children and a husband, knowing that she was going to issue another when they had no money. She must have been absolutely desperate.
Oh, look at all those birds.
I see them.
Bridal wreath bush.
Yep.
At first I thought somebody put ornaments there, and I thought, why would they put gray ornaments? Oh, that's funny.
Count on my mother, Denise Irving, to find humor in some of the darkest situations in life. While driving past Lakeside Cemetery in Pekin, my mother decided to stop so she could see the grave of her father, her grandmother, and of course, Alice. I like how there's just one leaf resting.
Yeah.
The last remaining Irving in the family. We stayed a while. Soon after, we decided to return to Peoria, but got to thinking on the way home.
Soft on her, but she probably was charged.
Yeah, she was definitely charged with it, but I don't know whether she was convicted of it. At first, my thought process was thinking, well, she wouldn't, because it could be a situation where they say, oh, well, she took too much. She wasn't intended to take all of this. But if abortion was illegal during that time, and some woman is going around selling abortion-inducing drugs, and she kills a woman, or the woman dies because she's taken it, I can't imagine there wouldn't be a court case over that.
And think of this. Think of Mrs. Etzler. She was a suffragette kind of woman.
Yeah.
She was out there trying to help
Women
who wanted
oh my
an
God,
abortion.
you're not even kidding.
And here I felt badly towards her, thinking, because
Wow.
I didn't know it was an abortion. I thought it was a beauty aid.
This is a lot deeper of a situation
Yes, it is. Yeah.
than I think we realized
Part of our women's history in our
is engraved
family.
into Alice's sister, our own family, our own Aunt Mert, that type of figure in our life, you know?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, all I know is these women are just surrounded by tragedy.
Life was not easy back then.
I started to see the women that we were chasing down a little bit differently. We drove past my grandmother Irving's house. Alice also lived here at the very end of her life. Prior to Alice going into the asylum, this was her last official home. Only a few blocks away was another home. It was the home Alice and her daughter Maud lived when they lived in Creve Coeur alone, prior to living with my grandparents.
That's where Grandma Alice and Maud lived for a long time, and then...
My mom's voice trailed off. I don't think she needed to finish what she was going to say. Being gone for most of the day already, we decided to get something to eat. sometimes a little greasy food is all you really need. After lunch, we went one final place, to the Peoria County Courthouse. We were going to see if maybe Maud Fleming, Alice's other sister, perhaps had a death certificate on file that maybe had the parents' listing.
Nice parking, Mama.
Thank you, sweetie.
The woman pulled into the spot like a ninja. Hopefully the records department would be just as lucky.
Down the long hallway we trotted, with anticipation of what we would find next.
Although a certificate of death was available, we had to order it. It would come in the mail. We drove away with such information from the day's find. Knowing how Hattie had passed away, and knowing how Alice had suffered near the end of her life in the asylum, was making us feel very, very heavy. We went home to examine all that we had learned. It was so much to take in. Even though we felt closer than when we started, we still knew we had so much left to uncover to find Alice's parents. We're still waiting to find the fate of Rosa Etzler, the doctor who gave Hattie the mixture.
Easy to look through all the records, but when you look at them in the succession and these death of mom and death of sister and then death of the other sister and dad dies and then she moves to Indiana, husband's cheating on her, her daughter dies, her husband dies, her son dies, and she gets put in, the only place that they can take care of her. Just poor Alice had just an incredibly, incredibly hard life. And it's easy to lose sight of that because we're looking for, her mom and dad and looking for the connections. It's easy to gloss over all this stuff.
But you're right,
The entire picture, this woman really, she was just tough as nails.
Shortly after returning home back in Arizona, a letter arrived. It was Maud's certificate. Unfortunately, there were no parents listed. Oh, sweet Grandma Alice. I'm not giving up yet. We'll find out who your parents were, one way or the other.